Full Metal Jacket, of which this is the first lecture of two about it, brings us to a nice sort of closing moment, which starts with Top Gun. This is the a midway point down the course towards the Forever War, but it is now, ironically, only 1 year later than Platoon, and yet it is a world away in understanding and in vision of the American mission, quote unquote, in Vietnam, and also the concept of what the soldier is supposed to do. And so Platoon is so elegiac and loving and mythic, as I've talked about, and Full Metal Jacket is completely the opposite. There is a discussion of behavior and morals, basically. But Kubrick is a very different guy, and he's got a very different sense of what human beings can be made to do. So the film is a it essentially has three creators. The first one is the novelist Gustav Hasford, and Hasford was this guy who joined the Marines, and he wrote a very intense, compressed first novel called The Short Timers, which became part of the first half of which basically became Full Metal Jacket. In the book, it doesn't quite end the same way. Joker becomes the leader of the squad and takes over, and they go on into the next adventure. Hasford was a Vietnam veteran who had a severe case of PTSD. He was he basically came back from Vietnam, very bright, an astonishing writer, and sort of not really very functional. Yeah, so very interesting guy. He wrote 3 books, I think, total, and they're all amazing. The book is picked up by Stanley Kubrick, who is one of the most famous directors, pardon me, just to come from America, and then he moves to Britain while he's making 2001, and that's it. He stays there. He then makes Clockwork Orange, Barry Lyndon, Full Metal Jacket, The Shining, and the film with Tom Cruise, Eyes Wide Shut. So he makes very few films. He's a real auteur. I mean, Kubrick is, as far as I'm concerned, probably the best, the most astonishing, unusual, brilliant director to have come out of both America and Britain in the 20th century. And he'll be matched by people like Akira Kurosawa in Japan, who will equally be just a genius when it comes to film. So Kubrick, when Kubrick gets his hands on something, he's going to turn it into his own thing. This is his 3rd war film. He makes Fear and Desire. Then he makes Paths of Glory, which is amazing. And then this film. The third writer and person who is basically who forms the project is Michael Hare, famous from having his book Dispatches. And Hare and Hasford have a very similar, in many ways, look at view of the war. Hasford has got this just savage, as you can tell, view of human beings. Hare is a lot more, a lot kinder. That's partly because he wasn't trained as a Marine and he didn't kill people the way that Hasford for sure did. These three people come together and produce the shooting script, which is a combination of the novel. It's some of Hare's stuff from Dispatches. There are some scenes which come directly out of Dispatches, and but more to the point, it's the worldview which is shared pretty much by the three men who see in the American war in Vietnam a certain kind of savagery, which they, is, as I say, it's just so not like Platoon. So that's what we're dealing with, and so you'll see here's the here's what I'm going to talk about in this discussion as soon as I get some tea. Tea. We must have tea. Okay. And I'm going to start off with human garbage. The perhaps most Kubrick was just a genius at picking out people who were going to become very important young actors. He picks Matthew Modine, who is a decent actor, and he picks Arliss Howard, who plays Cowboy, and who will go on to do very interesting things and make some interesting films, particularly a film called Big Bad Love, which is really very fine, which he and but most importantly, Vincent D'Onofrio, who plays Private Gomer Pyle, Leonard Lawrence, and he is just a genius. And D'Onofrio goes about his way, oscillating between these roles of us playing sort of psychotics, sweet sort of young man, and he plays romantic love interests, believe it or not. If you look at Happy Accidents, it's a very sweet romance with a little science fiction twist. It's a lovely little film. D'Onofrio is, I think, as you can see here, the way he captures this boy man, Gomer Pyle. Okay, so perhaps the most astonishing for most civilians is R. Lee Ermey's performance as Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. And gunnery sergeants are usually drill sergeants, and Hartman was a drill sergeant. He actually, he's as you can clearly see, he's military, and he's used to being a drill sergeant. So Kubrick said to him basically, "All right, I lined the boys up. Go out there and give them your best." And Hartman said, is there? I can't swear. And Kubrick said, "Oh, no. You just let them have it." So Hartman walks out, and he spent 15 minutes yelling at the recruits, the actors, without repeating himself once. And he never repeats. He never repeats an insult. He just is so complete. He's got such a vast array as a gunnery sergeant of abuse to heap on these men, and this is really what a drill sergeant looks like. I mean, and veterans who saw Full Metal Jacket adored this part of the movie because they felt it was absolutely right on. And it's basically, it is, as far as we know, the most realistic outside of a documentary. It is the most realistic depiction of a drill sergeant that you are going to see outside of going to boot camp, which I don't recommend. These men are Marines, and that means that they had to join up, and this is something that Joker talks about, and I will talk about it. But they are not Army. The men who are joining the Army are drafted usually, not all of them, but many. But you have to volunteer for the Marines, and the Marines have this reputation of being very hardcore, and they, for their because of their reputation, they wind up spending 13 months in Vietnam, not 12 months. So the Army is 12 months. You go on, say you arrive on February the 1st, you come back out on February 1st, you go home. DRO is your date eligible return from overseas. In the Marines, you'd go back on March 1st because you spent an extra month in country. And it's just sort of this one of these Marine things. It's like we're just, they're just badass, hardcore Marines, who ya, and all this stuff. So that's who these guys are. And we start off by seeing that they are reduced to human garbage. And this is a really important moment, a series of moments. It takes about 4 weeks or so in the training of soldiers, where typically the soldier is broken down. So you take away their civilian identity, you take away their names, you take away their identities in general, and you shred them physically so that they are not going to get enough sleep. They're going to be exhausted. You're going to run them. You're going to keep them moving most of the day. And at the point that you get to sort of 4 or 5 weeks in, they're going to be putty in your hands. Basically, they're going to do what you tell them to do, and they're going to be exhausted, and they are going to merge as a unit and begin to work together as a unit. And they will release their identities that they had as civilian identities and take on the new identities, which basically they've been given by the group and by the military around them. And that's what's going on here. So remember that we saw this same thing in Slaughterhouse 5, where the body becomes garbage. And there are these corpse mines that Billy sees and so on. But it starts with the Army, and this training has has gotten more and more strenuous and rigorous over the last, at least 60 years, where training is always an enormous issue for the military, how people train and so on. And this is a beloved system, and it's understood that this is what you do. Very often, the drill sergeants are combat veterans. So that they have a certain kind of rage and practicality about them, where they understand that the people they're dealing with have got to learn to work as a unit, because the unit is the best protection for the group, basically. The best protection for the group does not lie in you being an individual. The best protection for the group lies in you becoming one with the group and learning how to work with the group, because the group will protect you and you will work to protect the group. And this is the sort of the Army is sort of, or the military in general, is sort of one of those quintessential there is no I in team organizations. There is no space for the individual or the maverick, to go back to Top Gun. So this is as far away from Top Gun to some extent as you can possibly get. That's not really true because, but it's pretty good. So have a look at Hartman. So here comes Hartman and Lee Ermey playing Hartman, and he's going to spend some time yelling at the men. Okay, so we'll have him do that.
I am Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, your senior drill instructor. From now on, you will speak only when spoken to, and the first and last words out of your filthy sewers will be, sir. Do you maggots understand that?
Sir, yes, sir.
Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair.
Sir, yes, sir.
If you ladies leave my island, if you survive recruit training, you will be a weapon. You will be a minister of death praying for war. But until that day, you are pukes. You are the lowest form of life on earth. You are not even human fucking beings. You are nothing but unorganized, grabastic pieces of amphibian shit. Because I am hard, you will not like me. But the more you hate me, the more you will learn. I am hard, but I am fair. There is no racial bigotry here. I do not look down on niggers, kites, wops, or greasers. Here you are all equally worthless. And my orders are to weed out all non-hackers who do not pack the gear to serve in my beloved corps. Do you maggots understand that?
Okay. Why, what's going on here? What's going on here is an immediate power issue where the drill sergeant knows that he's going to spend the next basic training for the Marines, 11 to 12 weeks, depending on what's going on. They're shorten it if there's a war on, because they may need to get people out in the field sooner. Sometimes 13 weeks. Sometimes more, because then people graduate from boot camp and they go on to do a military specialty, which is what happens to Joker. So Hartman is giving out the assignments at the end of the first part, where the film breaks into these two parts: Paris Island and Vietnam. Paris Island is an island off the coast in America and of Eastern America, and it is completely owned basically by the military, and so Parris, Paris Island, and so when he says, if you ladies leave my island, if you graduate, so basically, you leave Paris Island one of two ways, one of three ways probably. You graduate as a Marine, in this case. You get injured or killed on the obstacle course, and you go out basically in a stretcher or in a box, or you are washed out by the military. Like, they identify you as being unsuitable for military purposes. And that can take a number of different forms. This is no joke. This is not going to be some pretty barracks romance where, Joker, because he's the smart guy, will get to be friends with the sergeants. Like, no. The sergeant's there to basically beat these guys up until they begin to pay attention to what he's saying, which is, you will get killed if you are stupid. I have a friend who was in... he was Army, went to Vietnam as Army because he was drafted, and they often have a couple of drill sergeants. In this case, you just see one, but usually there are a few running around. Usually there are a number of sergeants on the course, on the obstacle course and training course and so on, and they can all come and yell at you at the same time. I mean, which is so if you thought one was bad, it's like the idea is not to get shaken up by loud noises and people yelling at you. It's not about you, right? They're yelling at basically. It's just the way it goes. This is just how it is, and your job is to harden up, toughen up, basically. So my friend. So one of the drill sergeants they had was this huge, apparently, dude. And he was sort of this perfect physical specimen of, what would have been considered to be like the ideal soldier. But he had apparently been, he'd been concussed basically badly. He'd taken he'd had some kind of head wound, and I don't know if he had a steel plate, but he'd had some kind of head wound. So he was sort of functional, sort of not, but the Army was like, we'll keep him in, and he can be a drill sergeant. And when somebody did something stupid on the obstacle course or in weapons training or something like that, he would walk over. His name was Dozier, so of course they called him Dozer, Bulldozer, right? And he would come over. He's this big man, 6'2", 6'3", and he would look down, at whoever it was and say, "Charlie, gonna get you." Oh, Jesus. So the idea is to keep people alive, and if you have to treat them badly for 12 to 13 weeks, that's what you do, and that's what's going on here. So it's the beginning of the breaking the men down. Then here's more on that, because basically you have to be prepared to waste the men. Okay.
Listen up. I think we're being set up for an ambush. I think there may be strong enemy forces in those buildings over there. I've requested tank support. We're gonna sit tight till it comes, but keep your eyes open. If they decide to hit us, we'll have to pull back fast. Oh, cease your fire, mother! Cease your fucking fire! What?
We can't leave him out there.
We're not leaving him. We'll get him when the tank comes up.
He's hit 3 fucking times. He can't wait that long.
I've seen this before. That sniper's just trying to suck us in one at a time. Okay, listen up.
Listen up.
Can't afford to wait for the tank. I think they're gonna hit us any minute. When they do, we won't have time to pull out. We gotta do it now. Let's get ready to move.
Ready to pull out.
Wait a minute! Hold it! Hold it! Nobody's pulling out! There's only one fucking sniper out there! Back off, Mother. I'm calling the plays. I say we're pulling out. Yeah, well, what about Doc J and 8-Ball? I know it's a shitty thing to do, but we can't refuse to accept the situation. Yeah, well, we're not leaving Doc J and 8-Ball out there. Doc J and 8-Ball are wasted. You know that.
Bullshit. Come on, you guys. We gotta go bring him back. Let's go get him. Let's do it.
Stand down, Mother. That's a direct order.
In this piece, we have the actual showing of the body as garbage, where the sniper and Kubrick plays this out in particularly painful slow motion, where the men's extremities are being shot to pieces by high velocity rounds. So it's incredibly painful to watch this, and you see blood bags bursting everywhere, and it's all slow motion, but it's such personal violence. You know, it's not like a gut shot and the guy goes, oh, you know, falls over and is dead in a few minutes. Like, no, this is agony, which is going to go on and on. I mean, there, you know, even when at one point one of the men points, you know, to where the sniper is, that's it. You know, the sniper kills the guy. So that's the only way to get killed, basically. So this again is Cowboy, who now runs the squad, says, okay, we have to pull out. It's a shitty thing to do, but, you know, they're wasted. They're garbage. And basically that is the point. And then we have Animal Mother, who is sort of this throwback to World War II and Korean War films, who is sort of the hero's hero. And at the same time, he's a complete sociopath. I mean, well, he's not, actually. That's the thing. He seems to actually have some feelings. But he has this sleepy, to paraphrase a Japanese film title, the sleepy eyes of death. He's got these terribly, just you know, Adam Baldwin here. And one of the best things he ever did, and he just has this, you know, he's just half, if he's not killing you, he's not awake, basically. So he's just a terrifying figure. So he rallies the men, and, you know, off they're going to go, but then the men get shot to pieces. And so this is essentially the disposability of the soldier. Now, the Marines and the Army say they never leave people on the field. That's one of the Marine mottos, is that no man left behind, no person left behind, no man left behind, no Marine left behind. And in the novel, this is where the novel and the film differ. In the novel, when Joker, it's Cowboy who gets pinned down like this, and Joker realizes that it's a trap, and so he and Cowboy really are good friends, and Cowboy has to convince Joker basically to kill them all, and Joker does. So the way that the novel progresses is that Joker kills the people who are out in the clearing so that the Marines can move on, and they do. So it's this even darker vision. If you thought it was dark, this is pretty dark. And if you thought this was dark, it's like the novel's actually darker. I'm going to add very briefly here that one of the reasons that this scene is so important is that it's often considered to be a metaphor for the troops' position in Vietnam, or the American position in Vietnam now. And, you know, that's fine. I mean, I don't really talk about that, because you have to know a lot about the war to make this argument. That basically, so there are a couple of troops that are pinned down, and the idea is, and this, as you know, is one of these fallacies where you don't throw quote unquote good money after bad, or you don't throw more lives after lost lives. But that's not how the military operates. Certainly that's not how the Marines operate. But you could say, well, America doesn't want to leave At this point, by 1968, because it's the Tet Offensive, this particular Tet Offensive in 68, they've now lost 30,000 people in combat, let alone the people who are going to commit suicide and have gone home, with all kinds of injuries and are just lost. I mean, are just, man, they're right off basically for the culture. But the American military establishment is like, we're not leaving them, and that's Animal Mother, and the bureaucrats, and this is why Cowboy's speech is so important. Say it's a shitty situation, but we have to face the facts that we have to leave, and so like we're going to pull out, and the military says we're not pulling out, and the bureaucrats say yes we are, and so this is what is going to happen basically right at this point, at this juncture in the war, because of the Tet Offensive and the perceived loss militarily. Tet is a win for the Americans. They do throw back the Vietnamese offensive. They don't break, although it looks very close at times. And within really a couple of weeks, America is back in a very strong position militarily. And the North Vietnamese are just broken. They nearly quit. And it's astonishing how close, and they say later, boy, if you only knew, how close we came to just throwing in the towel. So you can read this whole situation of the two men being pinned down and the military refusing to leave, and the bureaucrats basically saying that as the leaders saying, we're going to pull out, as being a metaphor or an allegory, if you wish, for the whole situation in Vietnam. I'm not particularly going to push it because it's a reading. It's okay. Just wanted you to be aware of that. And so then we arrive at the scene where, which is the end of the first section. And Kubrick often directs films that seem to fall into two sections. It certainly happens in Paths of Glory, where we get the trenches and then we get the world of the mansion, or the courthouse, the chateau, basically. Then we get, and then in Clockwork Orange, same thing, division between essentially the violent crime part and then the reprogramming part. In Barry Lyndon, the part where Barry is doing his best to sort of live and learns to love his son and so on, and then that's it. And after that, it's a waste. It's all downhill. So there do tend to be, for Kubrick, these films which fall into two pieces. He does seem to understand things. 2001 as well, arguably, where the first section is, traveling to Jupiter and then Jupiter and beyond. And it's just sort of how he, I think, seemed to understand narrative, that this was something that it just made sense to him, that, the things were in, there's this and then there's this in contrast. So we can talk about the end of the first section, which would be the section on Paris Island, where Joker comes across Gomer Pyle with a loaded weapon. And as he says, if Hartman finds us, we're going to be in a world of shit. And Pyle says, I am in a world of shit. And of course, he literally is. They're in the head. And this is what the Marine barracks do look like. There is no privacy. And the reason there is no privacy is that you have to just toughen up. The body is no longer important. What's important is the Marine Corps. And the men sign their bodies over to the Marine Corps.
Are those live rounds? .762 millimeter. Full metal jacket. Leonard, if Hartman comes in here and catches us, we'll both be in a world of shit. I am in a world of shit.